What's the problem? What's the matter? What happened? Hello? Please, get me out of here, Lee. Hello? You're being sarcastic about this. You're a part of this all along. I have met this now. Shannon.
The 911 tapes, which contain Shannan Gilbert's last words for 21 minutes, and also contain the statements by the people whose doors she knocked on, and the statement by the Joseph Brewer, who she was with that night. The police have adamantly refused to give up those 911 tapes for 9 years. I've been fighting them alone ever since in order to obtain those tapes for me, for the investigation, so that the family of Shannan Gilbert can hear their sister's last words, and also so that this investigation can be made public and go forward. The police told the public that Shannan Gilbert was not murdered, and that instead Shannan Gilbert's disappearance was because of natural causes, and therefore, they said, Shannan Gilbert was not part of their active investigation, in which event we should have been given those tapes, but we weren't.
The gentleman you see speaking there is John Ray. He is Shannan Gilbert's family attorney, and he has devoted years of his life trying to get answers and justice for Shannan Gilbert and her family. On the 1st of May 2010, Shannon and her driver Michael Pak made their way to Oak Beach Gated Community on Long Island to visit a client, Joseph Brewer. Shannan Gilbert was a sex worker, and according to Michael Pak, she desperately needed money that day because her rent was due. He picked her up from Manhattan around 8 o'clock and they travelled out to Oak Beach, which is a gated community, and the clients are wealthy there. From what we can gather, she spent several hours in Joseph Brewer's company without incident. But early hours of the morning, around 4:51, 4:53, she makes a distressed call to 911, telling them repeatedly that someone's after her. I've put the link to the full 911 call down below, and you can have a listen to it in its entirety. But the clip I played at the beginning, I think, shows clearly how afraid she really was. At the beginning of the 911 call, you can hear Shannon repeatedly tell dispatch that someone's after her. Dispatch can't get an awful lot of information out of her. She doesn't know which house she's in. She doesn't know which part of Long Island she's in. She just says that she's on Long Island and wonders if they can trace the call, but they can't. They do keep her talking, and the call goes on for over 20 minutes. And throughout that call, we only hear two other voices, Joseph Brewer's and Michael Pak's, her driver, so Joseph Brewer is the client. It seems that Joseph Brewer wants her to leave. He's had enough. He even says, I'll go upstairs, you guys go. And also at one point says, let's all go out together. And Shannan Gilbert says, what, out there? In the middle of nowhere? She doesn't want to go. So it's like she's caught between a rock and a hard place. She doesn't feel safe indoors, and she doesn't want to leave. She asks Mike to take her away at one point, but he never says, come on then, let's go. There just doesn't seem to be a response. So after minutes of someone's after me, you're going to kill me, why are you going to kill me? She finally runs, and she runs to a neighbour's property after screaming, which is really distressing to hear. She knocks on the door of Gus Coletti's house. Now, law enforcement say that Gus Coletti invited her in, but she chose to run on. This is untrue. If you listen to the 911 call, he never invites her in. He says, "Is someone after you? Don't get yourself hurt. Where are you going?" You don't hear Shannon saying anything in response. I almost feel like she's a rabbit in the headlights. I don't think she knows who to trust. Has she seen him before, or is she becoming paranoid and thinks everyone is out to kill her? She then runs to another neighbour, Barbara Brennan. Barbara Brennan calls 911 and says she's not letting her in because she has an elderly mother inside. But 911 say they're going to send someone out there, but it takes them 50 minutes. By that time, Shannan Gilbert has disappeared and is never seen alive again. Michael Pack was seen following her. Well, we assume it's Michael Pack because it was a black SUV, and Gus Coletti said he could see a black SUV following her. Michael Pack claims he looked for her, but it was pitch black and it was unknown territory, so he just didn't know where to go to find her. Now, he would only have had to have waited minutes before the sun came up, and therefore it could not have been pitch black because it was almost dawn. During the search for Shannan Gilbert, police discovered 4 bodies. This soon rose to 11 bodies. The irony was they didn't find Shannon for another 20 months. When they found Shannon, after deciding a serial killer was on the loose, Shannon's death, however, was an accident, according to law enforcement. I find this really bizarre, and we'll look really further into this because once you start digging in the Gilgo beach murders, you dig up a whole pile of worms, and it's quite staggering the amount of corruption and cover-up that has gone on in this case by Suffolk County Police. To this day, they claim Shannon had an accident. She was found in the marshes, they say, afraid. She ran into the marshes and died of either hypothermia or she drowned. Now, Shannon's body was found face up. It's a little hard to drown when you're face up in the marshes. There's also no way of telling that she drowned because unfortunately her remains were now skeletal. If you look at the temperature of New York at that time of year, on that date, 2010, 1st of May, yes, New York's slightly warmer, Long Island would be a few degrees cooler, but it's not cold enough to die of hypothermia. Also, her pants and her purse were found somewhere else. A second autopsy was performed and her hyoid bone was broken, and there was a small drill-like hole in her neck bone. This is consistent with strangulation. Now, for me, it's pretty obvious why this was called an accident, and that is because there was a massive law enforcement cover-up going on at the time, and it's been going on for years. Let's look at who was who at the time. James Burke, he's the key. He was promoted to Chief of Police just days after Shannan Gilbert's remains were found. Now, that timing is very interesting, especially when you hear what comes next. He was promoted despite the fact he was caught having sex with a sex worker in his cop car whilst on duty and, pardon the pun, left his gun exposed as well. Sackable offence, I'd say, but no, Mr. Burke got promoted to Chief of Police despite this. Not only that, his girlfriend was a sex worker who had a child with him. But he didn't just have one girlfriend, he had another girlfriend who was a sex worker and ran a sex working operation from a cell phone that was linked to James Burke's property. Yep, Suffolk County Chief of Police. Not only that, John Ray interviewed a sex worker who claimed that James Burke often attended drug-fueled parties on Long Island where sex workers and escorts were present. So we've got a pretty corrupt, dark Chief of Police on this case. Now, when he's appointed, as I said, days after Shannon's remains were found, he blocked the FBI and other law enforcement's he blocked them from taking part in the investigation. And then the case just stopped being investigated and it was called an accident. Funny that. So James Burke was best buddies with Thomas Spoter, the former district attorney, and he was district attorney at the time. Both of those were convicted for something else. Someone broke into James Burke's car, a guy called Christopher Loeb, and he stole a bag that contained James Burke's sex toys and porn stash. Mr. Burke didn't like that at all, and when he was arrested, got put in jail and severely beaten up by Mr. Burke and his colleagues, and this got covered up, but he got caught out. So those are two of the characters that were in charge of this investigation, or certainly Thomas Spoter would have been alongside overseeing it. Now there is another character, Dr. Charles Peter Hackett. You may have heard of him. He was a big shot in the Oak Beach neighbourhood. Now he was also linked to law enforcement, which I didn't actually realise at the time. He was the former head of the Suffolk County Emergency Medical Services. Mr. Hackett, or Dr. Hackett, I beg your pardon, deleted the video camera footage from that night. There was no footage left. He was in charge of the cameras because people have asked, it was a gated community. Surely there was footage, but no. Dr. Hackett, in charge of the cameras, deleted the recordings. The police maintain he's not a suspect. It gets worse.
Her mother, Mary Gilbert, hears from a mysterious stranger.
I got a phone call from a man. He said, my name is Dr. Peter Hackett. I'm calling to see if your daughter Shannon is there. I said, no. I said, why? Who are you? And he said that he ran a wayward house for girls. Shannon was there. She was upset. He'd given her some medication to calm her down, and he was worried about her. Is she home?
Dr. Peter Hackett, a former physician for the Suffolk County Police, who was living in Oak Beach when Shannon went missing in the neighborhood.
I had asked him, how did you get my number? And he told me that, it's the policy that if anyone goes to his house, that he has to have contact information. And I knew that was wrong.
So it was approximately 4 minutes after helicopters arrived looking for Shannon that Hackett decided to call Mary Gilbert, Shannon's mother, and tell her that he was concerned and it was his mission to find her. He did not, however, call Suffolk County Police, and he didn't call Shannon. Is that because he already knew she was dead? Just a possibility. An ironic twist is that when Shannan Gilbert's remains were found, Mary Gilbert was taken onto Hackett's balcony by law enforcement, and they pointed to the rear of his house, telling her that that's where Shannon had been located. Her pants and her purse were also behind his property. True Crime Daily caught up with Dr. Peter Hackett 7 years ago. It's quite a response when asked questions by their journalists.
Anything to do with Shannan Gilbert's death? Of course not.
We never quite got his side of the story, but we certainly got a shocking interview.
So you never ran a home for wayward girls, and you had nothing to do with Shannan Gilbert's death? That's correct.
But don't forget, Shannon's mother says he absolutely told her he ran a house for wayward girls in a phone call to her.
What about all the other girls? Ah! Jesus! What was that?
A defibrillator. Something.
911.
No, don't. No, it's all right.
No.
I'm a doctor.
I'm calling 911.
You call 911, I'll refuse.
I'm going to call 911.
Please don't.
Please, doctor, let me call 911.
Okay. Would you find out these guys caused me to have a defibrillation? Just take pictures of these clowns, would you?
And that was Dr. Hackett keeping it together for journalist questions. Apparently, if you are a doctor, you do not need medical attention if you are experiencing a defibrillation. When Shannan Gilbert's body was found, or her remains I should say, she was still wearing her bra and it was cut down the front. Not torn, cut. Hackett's house was just beyond Barbara Brennan, so it makes perfect sense that she ran further along the street and knocked on a different door, but this time was invited inside. Hackett has never been named as a suspect, And right now, we have Rex Hoyman, the main suspect in the Gilgo Beach murders, in custody. There's a mountain of evidence against that man, and I don't for 1 minute think he's innocent of anything. But is there another part to this case? There's only one reason that law enforcement have fought tooth and nail to keep Shannan Gilbert's call a secret. Because it's so clearly not an accident. She was running for her life. There were blood-curdling screams, and she vanished, and her remains were found. How can that be coincidence? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know your theories. Do you think Rex Hoyman is responsible for all the bodies found in that area, or do you think there's more to it? I wonder if he'll talk. I wonder if more names will come out. I wonder if worms will start crawling out of this can that has been opened, a can of corruption from the top. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Take care.